All right, let's talk about compliance playbooks. Now I know, the name itself sounds kind of dry, maybe even a little boring. But trust me on this one. Getting this right is one of the most critical survival skills for any leader in today's business world. This isn't just about checking boxes or avoiding trouble. It's really about building a smarter, stronger, and way more resilient organization.
So, to kick things off, I just want you to look at this number, $14.8 million. Just let that sink in for a second. It's not revenue, it's not evaluation, it's a cost. But a cost for what?
That's it right there. That is the average price tag for getting compliance wrong. And look, we're not just talking about some government fines here. This is the whole shebang, the legal fees, the disruption, and maybe worst of all, the kind of damage to your reputation that can take years, if not decades, to repair. The stakes are just incredibly high.
But here is the absolute kicker. Look at this. That nearly $15 million figure for non-compliance, it's almost 3 times what it costs to just maintain compliance in the first place. The math is staring you right in the face. Being proactive isn't just a good idea, it is a massive, undeniable financial win.
Okay, so we've seen the price tag, but what does this actually look like in the real world? In today's landscape, you just can't hide anymore. The idea of flying under the radar, it's gone. And some of the biggest companies out there have learned that lesson the hard way.
I mean, take JP Morgan. They got slammed with a $200 million fine. And for what? Not for some incredibly complex financial scheme, but for failing to keep proper records. It was a breakdown in a fundamental day-to-day process. Or how about Marriott? A data breach ended up costing them $124 million in fines. This just goes to show you how data protection has become a core, non-negotiable part of compliance for pretty much any company that handles customer info.
And, of course, the big one, Equifax. That massive breach back in 2017, it led to a settlement of $575 million. And these aren't small businesses we're talking about. It just proves that no one is too big to fail on this. So, the real question is, how do you stop this from happening to you?
So how do you actually defend yourself against these enormous risks? Well, this is where the hero of our story comes in, the compliance playbook. This is your practical, hands-on answer to a very high-stakes problem. Forget those dusty, 3-ring binders full of policies nobody reads. This is your team's real-world guide to survival.
So, what is it exactly? Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a sports playbook for your team. It takes that whole confusing mess of laws, regulations, and corporate policies, and it turns it all into simple, clear plays. Step-by-step instructions that your team can actually follow day in and day out to make sure they're staying on the right side of the line.
So why is this a leader's secret weapon? Well, think about it this way. You get the best of both worlds. On the one hand, it's about the process, right? You're reducing those daily risks and making sure everyone's doing things the same, consistent way. But on the other hand, and this is huge, it's about your people. You're giving them the confidence to make the right calls, which creates a culture where everyone feels accountable. It's a win for your bottom line and a win for your team's morale.
Okay, so we're sold. We get what it is, we get why we need it, but what actually goes into a great playbook? What does one look like? Let's pop the hood and break down the blueprint. A really solid playbook has a few key ingredients. You've got to start with the foundation. What's the purpose and what are the key rules we need to follow, but explained in plain English. Then you build out the structure. Who is responsible for what, and what are the literal, step-by-step procedures to follow? And finally, you have to build in a safety net, clear ways to report problems, and a rock-solid plan for what to do when, stuff hits the fan.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, especially for global teams. You have to deal with totally different ways of thinking about rules. The US approach, it's often very rules-based, like a super detailed checklist you have to follow exactly. But the EU, with laws like GDPR, that's the General Data Protection Regulation, it's more principles-based. It's focused on the outcome, protecting people's data, and they give companies more flexibility on how they get there. A great playbook has to be smart enough to handle both.
All right, time to get practical. How do you actually build one of these things? I promise, it's not as scary as it sounds, especially if you break it down into a clear, manageable action plan.
It's really a 6-step process. First, you figure out your scope and what your biggest risks are. Step 2, and this is so important, you talk to your legal team, yes, but you also have to talk to the folks on the front lines who actually do the work every day. After you map it all out and get sign-off, the rollout is key. We're talking real training, not just a quick email. And finally, you have to treat it like software. Schedule regular updates because your playbook has to be a living, breathing document.
And that brings us to our last section. And you know, it might be the most important one. Because a playbook isn't about creating a document. It's about using that document as a tool to build something much, much bigger, a real culture of compliance.
This really gets to the heart of it all. A playbook that just sits on a digital shelf has zero power. It's a tool, not an ornament. Its power comes from being used, talked about, and lived. And as a leader, you have to be its #1 fan. Refer to it in your meetings, use it in your onboarding, celebrate the wins that come from following it. You are the one who sets the tone.
I love this quote. It just perfectly nails what an effective compliance program is all about. It's not one person or one department acting as the compliance police. No way. It's a team effort where everybody knows their position, they know their responsibilities, and they know how what they do helps the whole team win.
So, I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. Your company might have policy, sure. It might even have a document you call a playbook. But is it just a document? Or is it the foundation of a culture where every single person feels empowered and is expected to do the right thing? Because that right there is the difference between simply surviving and actually succeeding.